Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Empowering Yourself Through Conflict. Unfortunately, we weren't able to connect to LinkedIn Live. We had some technical difficulties, so we're going to record and upload for you today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ayesha Adhami-Magueta. I am a certified personal, professional, and business coach. My specialty is trauma and grief-informed coaching, as well as conflict navigation. And I'm joined by my colleague, Shannon O'Neill. Shannon, tell us a little bit about you.
I'm the co-founder of TLE-Wellness Center. TLE stands for the lived experience, where we bring our lived experience into our practice as a skill. I'm a qualified mediator that coaches and counsels families and workplaces through conflict and conflict de-escalation.
Excellent. So today, our topic is boundaries. We're going to do a little bit of discussion around what boundaries are, how we may or may not experience them or know about them, and just have some self-awareness around what it takes to actually start thinking about putting boundaries in place and executing them in our daily life, and especially in conflict. But before we get started, we're going to do a quick land acknowledgement. Here in Canada, we are coming up to Truth and Reconciliation Day. And as always, we want to acknowledge that our collective work takes place in settler communities on traditional Indigenous territories across what is known as the province of Ontario in Canada. We hold and honor the 46 treaties and other agreements that cover these territories and respectfully acknowledge First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who are the traditional carers of these lands, as well as our own responsibilities to meaningfully contribute to the well-being of these lands and the freedom, rights, and protections of all Indigenous people, as well as people in our shared community. We also stand in solidarity with the Indigenous communities in that every child matters. So with that, we give our thanks, and let's get started. Shannon, tell us a little bit about what are boundaries? What are we talking about when we talk about boundaries?
Boundaries are rules, anchors, framework, whatever kind of word works for you. And to begin with, they are something that I or you do to keep yourself safe in difficult situations. So it's a change that I make, not a change that I expect somebody else to make. And they can be internal, meaning it's something that I do differently that I don't share with anybody, or they can be external, meaning that it's me and my conflict partner will negotiate. How do we have these difficult conversations together? What is it that we need to both feel safe?
Yeah, that makes total sense. That you have, first of all, you have the internal knowledge about what feels good for you, how you feel safe, what you need to feel protected and seen and heard in an engagement or in a conversation, and then how you communicate that and negotiate that with the other person. What now for a lot of us, our ability to understand and implement, execute, if you will, boundaries comes from our experience and what we were modeled as children, because that's where most of our behavioral patterns, most of our conditioning, how we see the world, that's where that lives. What how did your experience as a child shape your relationship with boundaries, or how you implement boundaries or even understand them?
So as a caveat to all of this is that I reflect on my upbringing from a lens of curiosity, not blame.
Hmm.
So because it is a learned behavior and my parents learned how to their boundaries from their parents and so on. So for me, I would say that there was no agreed upon boundary in conflict when I was growing up.
Hmm.
So when emotions got high or there was a perceived sense of disagreement or threat, then all behaviors were permitted. And that could look like name calling, swearing, throwing things, um, and without any even real parameters around how long that was allowed to go for, or
Mm,
parameters around, okay, if this happens, we're going to come back together and we're going to figure out a way forward. So basically, most conflicts, especially the ones that were so charged, were swept under the rug and not ever resolved. So any slight misstep would reinvigorate the conflict again, and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat.
mm. And that, as children, I think that that's hard to really get your head around and hard to understand. What did that create for you in terms of just thinking about how to advocate for yourself or how to have these difficult conversations with other people?
There was no advocating for myself, right? It was
Uh,
it was it was how do I keep safe, right? Because disagreement was a threat. Like if
mm,
a disagreement, that's a threat. I had to do something to keep safe. So whether that was appeasing, like, okay, whatever you want. Yeah, of course I'll do that. Whether that was just avoiding, escaping into my room, which as another aside, my room was also not a safe space. If I closed my door in conflict, wanting space, the door was allowed to be opened because they were the parents, right?
right.
And
Got
so
it.
it was even difficult to avoid. So, you know, I went to my survival state in difficult conversations. I didn't learn how to keep myself grounded and to understand that it's okay to have emotional discomfort, and that emotional discomfort does not mean that there's going to be a disaster or chaos that's going to ensue.
Hmm. Uh, that's a lot for a child to have to kind of process and understand. And I think, my experience is a little bit different, but I think that the core experience is very similar, in that, the same as yourself. I acknowledge even in discussing this that it's intergenerational. A lot of this is intergenerational modeling and learning how our families evolved and how they coped, and also to just be mindful that uh, the coping strategies that we used, it's easy to look back in hindsight and say, I wish I didn't have to do it that way, or I wish this didn't happen. But we also want to acknowledge that the coping mechanisms that we use them for a reason.
Mhm,
And sometimes we still use them.
mhm,
And that's okay. It's just to give ourselves choices about what we can do now versus what we didn't have any choice about in the past, right? So in my case, there was a lot of shutting down of conflict. There was a lot of basically not just shutting down of conflict, but shutting down of emotion. So if there was a problem, if someone was angry, there was just a lot of silence and
mhm,
non-engagement. And that made it also feel very unsafe to self-advocate or to bring up topics or to think about, how do I negotiate with someone who isn't able to negotiate? And I think that I learned some of that behavior as well. It wasn't until I was much older that I started to recognize how much I was using those same patterns in my own relationships and difficult conversations and not really being able to negotiate my position very well. And I think that's part of the thing around boundaries is recognizing where the lack of skills are affecting our well-being and are affecting our quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, I probably spent a lot of my teens and 20s and 30s being disassociated in conflict.
Mm, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and like that's then the what happens in which is a survival strategy, and it worked for me and it kept me safe until it no longer kept me safe, because
Right.
what the outcome of being in survival in those moments consistently does is it made me not trust my own perspective,
Mm,
I was not in tune with my gut. I did not have a relationship between mind and body,
Yeah.
and that it was very easy for me to defend myself against accusation. Like it was an instinct to defend against an accusation, or maybe a criticism, and some of them were just probably constructive criticisms. For example, a friend of mine said in my early 20s that I had to learn how to pick my battles, and I was like, what do you mean I have to learn how to pick my battles? Like, what are you talking about? So, like, it made me really defensive, and it made it hard for me to gauge whether or not some conversation or conflict or dispute was in good faith, or whether it was just for the fight. So I couldn't even accurately assess whether or not this conversation was a threat or not. And that's really why I started to learn about conflict and conflict resolution. And that was my first tune in to my self-awareness.
Mm. Which is really the foundation of all of our kind of work towards well-being and being able to interact in a healthy way, is to have that self-awareness about what we're experiencing, why we're experiencing it. And again, not from a blame lens, but just to give ourselves context, give ourselves, we talk a lot about emotional intelligence, but emotional intelligence is just one piece of the puzzle. We want to add in relational intelligence. What has this relationship been like? What are our beliefs, and what are our stories, and what are our experiences in the relationship? What is the context of this conflict is? So having emotional intelligence, relational intelligence, contextual intelligence, and bringing all those things together helps us tap into self-awareness so that we can more effectively and more skillfully engage what's in front of us and understand our own feelings, right?
Mhm.
And I agree with you. Like, it wasn't until I was well into, well, my 40s, I would say, that I started really looking at why am I feeling this way? Why do I have trouble in difficult conversations? Why can't I get my needs met? Why
Mhm.
don't people pay attention when I ask them to stop doing something that's hurtful? And then recognizing all these places where, oh, I actually don't have boundaries, but then I don't even know what my boundaries look like, right?
Mhm.
So it's that being able to tap into that knowledge and awareness is so important and so crucial for us to be able to be balanced and grounded and get the outcomes we're looking for.
And it requires a lot of work and support.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my, and we've talked about this, a lot of my work with clients is spent on just that piece. Like,
Yes.
who are you while you're in conflict? What are the influences? How did you get there? Like that self-exploration for that self-awareness. Because oftentimes we describe ourselves when we are grounded and not necessarily when we are out of our window or in conflict, because conflict does not bring out the best in us,
Yeah.
right?
Or
Um,
others.
or others,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
So that self-awareness piece, having a reflective space to explore that's non-judgmental and from a curious lens is I mean, I would say it's necessary. Um, and like to get to a place of conflict resolution, that's the place to start, is your own self-awareness about how you are in conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a coaching perspective, that also rings true, because that the coaching space allows us to explore exactly those kinds of topics. Who are we? Where did this come from? How is it serving us? How is it not serving us? What would we like to do differently? What is
Mhm.
our capacity? What is our capability? What kind of skills do we have? What's in our toolbox? It's those kinds of explorations that allow us to start making choices and to really re-implement agency and empowerment in how we're engaging in situations, and also recognizing that just because a pattern has been a particular way for a very long time doesn't mean it has to stay that way, right?
Mhm.
What I also love about the work that we do is that what we're doing is we're supporting people to we're supporting our clients to be agile and to be flexible. You may put down a boundary today, but as you grow and as you evolve, as you get stronger, as you deal with and you become more confident and more skillful, your boundary might change. You might soften a little bit. You might open up a little bit. You might take down a boundary. You might put
Mhm.
up a different boundary. It gives you that real ability to flow with what's happening in your life and to be able to be confident and skillful while you're going through it.
Right. Yeah, self-awareness as a practice.
Exactly.
So, what are some examples of boundaries that you have, whether they're internal or external, in conflict?
Well, I would say one that is both internal and external is how I respond to communication. Now, I know a lot of us, and I've also for a long time was conditioned that whenever a communication came in, whether it was a text or an email or a phone call, that I would just engage it. Didn't matter where I was or what I was doing or whether I had the capacity for it or not. I would just deal with it. And sometimes the outcome was not what I wanted or wasn't helpful. And now the internal boundary that I have is a check-in with my own capacity before I engage something that I know is going to be a difficult conversation or that might stretch my resources. And then the external boundary is I engage it when I'm able to bring a balance and grounding and capacity to that conversation. Yeah. How about you?
For me, and again, like I think that this is part of the intergenerational part, like how we were brought up, that definitely influenced my boundaries. So for me, it's no name calling in difficult conversations,
Mm,
no swearing in difficult conversations. And then the other piece that I learned from doing this practice and working in mental health is that I ask permission to the other person if they are able to have the difficult conversation. So,
mm,
hey, I wanted to talk to you about the housework. Is now
mm.
time,
Yeah,
right? Um, and just getting that consent because it's not just about my self-regulation, it's also about the regulate like where somebody else is as well to have
yeah,
that difficult conversation because I might be totally in my window of tolerance, but the other person may not. They might be hungry or they might be tired or they might have had a really hard day. So that consent piece for having a difficult conversation is something that I strongly advocate for.
absolutely. Consent and permission are definitely a key part of boundaries and a respectful way to engage your conflict partner when you're having a difficult conversation. Can you just, for our listeners who may not be familiar, our viewers that may not be familiar, can you just quickly define what you mean by a window of tolerance?
So where my wise mind is online, where I'm in a place where I am able to understand my perspective and also open to hearing somebody else's perspective. So
Okay,
be hyper aroused, like, really anxious and in fight mode and like not like we want the fight, or we could be like, I just want to get underneath my blanket and like escape the world. So
right.
being in your window of tolerance means being grounded and being open to hearing the other person's perspective, being open for that good faith conversation.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. All right.
Okay.
Well, we have today, Shannon and I, as an exercise in boundaries, we committed to an 18-minute episode and we're at the 18 minutes now. So we're going to wrap it up here. Shannon, any closing thoughts for our viewers today?
Um, Take time when you feel like you have no time because conflict feels like crisis and it's counterintuitive, but slow down to catch up.
Nice. I like it. And for me, I would say that, in any kind of boundary conversation, anything around our own, because this is healing work, is to
Mm,
be self-caring and to be compassionate towards ourselves and as much as possible towards other people as well, so that you can get to the place that you want to get to, which is often to have some kind of a workable and, caring relationship with the
mhm,
people that are around you.
mhm.
So exercise compassion and kindness to yourself and to others. All right. So that's it for our episode today. If you want to reach out to us, our email addresses are visible on our profile pictures here, and you can also DM us on LinkedIn. And next time we are going to talk about boundaries in conflict, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then we will go from there. All right. Have a good day, everyone. We'll see you again soon.